Luisa Russo. I'm field coordinator in Mali for the projects on Malian manuscripts for the Center for the Study of Manuscript Cultures of the University of Hamburg. I am specialist in preservation, conservation, and management of library and archival collections, and I will be presenting you this work. We will be working together in this workshop about the different aspects of preservation, conservation, digitization planning in the library. So I will start straightforward by sharing my screen. Just a couple of communications. I remind you that simultaneous translation is available for the whole workshop, and we will also be working in groups, and there will be simultaneous translation also in the different groups. So please use the buttons for the translation and interpretation and in the bottom of your screen. And I also ask the interpreters to warn me in case I speak too fast or if there is any issue with the translation. Now I'm sharing my screen. I hope everybody is able to see it. If it's not the case, please let me know. Our workshop is about preservation and digitization planning for library collections. And these are the topics of our workshop. First of all, some basics about preservation, conservation, and digitization. Then we will have work in groups, a discussion session, then another presentation about project funding, and a second session of work in groups. And finally, we will end with discussion and conclusion. I am just... So, let's start from the beginning. I know many of the participants are already skilled and high experienced in these topics, but I am addressing these workshops to a wide range of professionalities involved in libraries and archives. And I would like to really focus on important points about our task in our institutions. First of all, I just remind what has been, what is clear to all of us about the double value of our written cultural heritage as physical object and text. It is clear to all of us, but we will have to keep it in mind and remind it while planning our activities in the libraries and in archives, of course. And sorry. And we will deal with these three different aspects, not only in themselves, but in their relation, their respective relation. Meaning that when we have to deal with our collections, we have to prioritize interventions. And we will see some options for doing that and which elements we should take into consideration when planning our preservation and promotion valorization plan for our collections. I would like to show you some images first of items and invite you to tell me what you see, which kind of damages you see in the items I'm showing to you. So I would like this workshop to be as interactive as possible, and really I invite you to think with me and interact in this aspect. So if I ask you which kind of damage you can see in this manuscript, what would you say? Not. Okay, so I will just go on with the presentation.
Oui, c'est pour, il y a un problème ici pour la reliure. Je vois que le cuir s'est très détruit. Et maintenant, les feuilles, il y a des taches, beaucoup de feuilles. L'encre, ce n'est pas bon. Et il y a beaucoup de fondu sur les étapes. Pour les edges, on the edge, très... Je regarde encore, il y a en bas, il y a pour le dos, il y a des nerfs détruits et encore il y a une feuille, c'était collé sur le dos de manuscrit. C'était écrit, ce que je peux le voir maintenant.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you have highlighted some of the issues that we can see in this item. So the leather is very dry and it has some tears and some parts of it are missing. Then we have a significant damage on inks. So it seems the manuscript has been touched by water and the ink has gone, a part of the ink has gone, and there are stains. In other parts of the manuscript, there are water stains and maybe also mold stains. So these are the main issues that we can highlight in this manuscript. What about this one?
J'espère, pardon.
التلف الموجود في هذه المخطوطة.
Yeah, the damage here.
Oui, je vois encore ici dans cette feuille de manuscrit qu'il y a l'encre, c'est le fer, l'encre en fer très collé. Il y a une page collée en dessous. Il y a des insectes dans le front de page. Il y a ici encore les feuilles sont déchirées et agitées en
And I think there are words that are missing.
Yes, the main issue
هناك يعني من الممكن
we can see that the description here, we can give it scientific description. This paper,
فيها طمس.
it has faded areas in some parts. Some parts are faded, and the problem is humidity. It's not water. I think it's a high percentage of humidity.
Par les taches santé.
We can see significant damage by inks. So inks that have this abrasive chemical component that really has severely damaged the manuscript, and also an addition of paper and tears, so a range of physical damage. This one, it was somehow an example of what has been already mentioned. So physical damage like tears and some legs in the paper. And of course, we also mentioned the insect problems, for instance, in this manuscript. What about this one? Any idea?
Oui, je pense ici.
I think that there are dust that covers this manuscript, and I think that this manuscript was not preserved in a good way. And I think also that the cover, the main cover, is damaged by insects. And there are a lot of dust on the manuscript. As for the pages, it seems that the pages were not correctly preserved. I think it has many aspects. It's not one manuscript, it's different manuscripts, and they are all put piled over each other. I think it's not catalogued, these manuscripts, and they were all preserved or kept this way in such random way. The pages were kept in random way, and that we can see that there are stains, ink stains, and also we can see a reflection of these stains on some of the lines. And this is what I see as for the first page, and the front page. I think that the front page is not written. Nothing is written. It might be the cover. And I think that it was only the cover. Also, there are traces of insects that damaged these papers, and chemicals also that were used. We see
for your comments and also the comments that are coming in the chat. We see you're active in answering, so it's very nice. Of course, these manuscripts is more than one manuscript.
هناك
In white with problems of insects, maybe also rats. So insects which have damaged this cover that seems to be in leather, then also the paper. And the manuscript again have been touched by water. So we see the water stains here, and inks have been damaged by this aspect as well. So we have addressed quite a lot of damages, and in this image, I just wanted to show another aspect of insect damages on printed book, where you really can see the path of insects through the paper. So these examples were just to address one of the main issues of our tasks in our cultural institution, preserving written cultural heritage. When we deal with this kind of situation, if you want to have an intervention to save these leaves, these manuscript leaves, we have no choice than doing a conservation treatment, un traitement de restauration. Donc, so the restoration which will address the individual item. But if we enlarge our perspective to the whole collection, we have to ask ourselves what happened here. And we have to ask ourselves whether this damage can also affect other items in the library. So we cannot limit ourselves to the individual item. And what I usually like to remind is this approachment between healthcare and care in the field of cultural heritage. Preventive conservation, meaning taking care of what is the environment and the whole collection, the environment in which it is stored, and its long-term preservation is like taking care of a chronic disease. When a physician takes care of a chronic disease such as diabetes, the patient has to take into consideration that she will have to take care of this disease for the whole length of her life. On the other hand, conservation treatment is like surgical intervention. When you break your leg and then you have a surgical intervention, hopefully you have your leg working again. But it will, first of all, it will not be exactly as before. Maybe you will have some pain, and most of all, the surgical intervention doesn't prevent, let's say, the fact to happen again. So it doesn't prevent you to break your leg again. So the way we have to approach conservation treatment, restoration on the one hand, and preventive conservation is in this perspective. We have to take care of a wider range, wider panorama that I will show you. In this, in our approach to conservation treatment, we are conditioned by what is called the before-after treatment bias. That means that general public and sometimes also us and as professionals in the institutions appreciate the after treatment appearance, because everything after treatments more or less looks better, looks neater, looks cleaner, like in the images I can show you. So before treatment, after treatment, before treatment, after treatment. So we have this bias that really influences our approach to conservation, because we think that with conservation treatment we solve the problems and we put things as they were somehow new. And first of all, we don't want old manuscripts to look as new. And secondly, it's not entirely true. It's not true. We lose a lot of aspects during the conservation treatment. So we have to take care of this aspect as well. So when talking about conservation treatment, what is the purpose of restoration of the conservation treatment? Is slowing down the decay process. And on purpose, I say slowing down and not stopping, because no conservation treatment will stop a decay that is on our objects, on our item, on our artifacts, which are made of organic components who will keep aging during decades. The conservation treatment always implies the loss of certain material data. So we have to take this into careful consideration and really be careful when planning the conservation treatment. And it is very expensive, both in terms of time and in terms of money. Time, if you have a conservator working in your libraries who can perform the conservation treatment, he will spend a lot of time on individual items. And but on the other hand, if you have to give your artifacts to an external conservator to restore it, it will be very expensive. So we have to be aware of the limits of the conservation treatment. This is very important. And we have to change a bit our perspective. Talking about preventive conservation, la conservation préventive, comme on dit. Its purpose is as well slowing down the decay process, and I really emphasize reducing significantly the need of conservation treatment. If we do a proper preservation plan, we will have much less items, much less artifacts to be to undergo the conservation treatment. So really, it's beneficial to the whole collection. Preventive conservation has a minimal costs. A lot of activities in preventive conservation can be done in-house and with a very cheap and really, and its efficacy it is really excellent. And we have to get used to think on a long-term scale. We have to put a bit aside this willing of seeing the before and after treatment with our eyes. We have to think in a wider panorama, and I will show you some aspects. So working on preventive conservation allows us to ensure the conservation, the preservation of our collections with a series of activities. This is not a course on preventive conservation. I will just highlight some points, and then we will have the opportunity of fully to discuss also during work groups. When approaching our collections, first of all, don't go into activity immediately, but you have to take your time and do an assessment of the whole collection, of manuscripts, prints, documents, whatever you have in your library and archive. You have to know what is there, what is preserved there, and what are the preservation problems. Collections and storage rooms, we will see it's essential to know the situation. Cleaning. It's not just dust in our libraries. It's dust means a lot of things. Among them, it might mean insect eggs or mold spores, a lot of harmful elements. So cleaning is essential in a library. Monitoring insects, monitoring environmental data, temperature, humidity, because a lot of the problems that we saw in the previous images come from an inadequate environmental conditions in the storage room. And of course, regular check of storage rooms. Then again, cleaning. I will not insist much. I will never insist too much on this aspect. You have to keep your storage rooms clean. Then boxes and enclosures. A lot of damages to our items in libraries and archives comes from handling and storage. And boxes and enclosures are really absolutely helpful in reducing so much the physical damage the manuscripts receive during handling in the storage room, during handling in the reading rooms, etc. So providing boxes and enclosures is really important. Proper arrangement on shelves, of course. You have to make sure the manuscripts are correctly shelved and possibly inside boxes and enclosures. After having provided not after, but often it comes, the two aspects are go together. You can provide dry cleaning of individual items, which is very helpful, of course, for individual items. You can really get them very clean, but also to have an idea, for instance, in case of insect pests, it is another important step. And while doing these activities, it is very important to collect data about the status of items. So if there are specific conservation problems that should be addressed with conservation treatment, the preservation assessment is really a good opportunity to take them into consideration. And then again, cleaning. So these are just images of library. Okay. Cleaning and dry cleaning of manuscripts with brushes Many of these activities are very low cost and can be performed within the library. As for boxes and enclosures, you can have several types of boxes and enclosures you can do. There are clamshell boxes with textile on the outer side, or you can have case boxes with cardboard, or simple envelopes and closures for your manuscripts. And many of these enclosures you can do them in the library in your own institution. On this aspect, I invite you to see our website of CSMC, where in the frame of our Kathmandu project, we have been publishing these directions for these instructions for box making, and these instructions, this model has been studied by Michel Bieder, who is conservator in the Wesleyan University, and this guide provides you with very easy and steps for box making, and I will share the link with you so that you can see, for instance, how to build this kind of box. And but there are several other opportunities for making simple enclosures, of course, in the library. Environmental related issues such as insects and molds, it is very important to address them with an accurate monitoring of storage rooms, monitoring temperature, relative humidity, light, pollution, everything you can think of. I mean, the most important aspects usually are temperature and relative humidity, because they are very harmful for the development of insect pests and molds as well. But please remind also that molds also develop in a cold environment. Your cheese in the fridge will have molds even if it's cold in there. So really it is important to take care of storage rooms and monitor the environment. This will give you data about relative humidity and temperature, for instance. Here it was an example. We were checking the water content of manuscripts of paper, because molds grow according to a certain amount of water content of paper, and paper, of course, absorbs water from the environment. So it is important to monitor the storage rooms. Then, of course, we have to know, to ask ourselves, do staff and users know how to handle manuscripts? And if we want to make the use of gloves. The problem of gloves is very debated, but I tell you that many conservators, so curators don't use gloves to handle manuscripts, because it is important to keep the sensibility of your fingers on paper. I used to do also with Malian manuscripts, where paper is so brittle that you can easily catch fragments of paper if you use textile gloves. So it's really preferable to have your hands, the sensibility of your hands, and of course it is essential to have your hands always clean. Both when handling within the library, and both when accessing the manuscripts for research purposes. So having outlined the essential points of the preservation plan and why it is important to assess the situation and to act according to our preservation plan, we have to see how digitization relates to these aspects. Digitization is strictly related to preservation. let's remind the topic. So that digitization allows us to preserve text, but just a minimal part of physical data, and in any way it's not the real item. So it's not, we will keep caring about our physical collections. Digitization is very important for cataloging and research purposes, of course, but also for wider public, because it ensures the access of manuscripts, reducing enormously the handling of original items. Original items can be therefore accessed by scholars who are interested in the codicological part of the collection, for instance, but all scholars interested exclusively in the text could find in the digitized manuscripts a really essential fellow of their work. And of course, it multiplies the promotion opportunities by the organization of exhibition, online exhibition, etc. So we have to think these three elements: preservation, digitization, conservation, and digitization as an interrelated group of activities in which we should engage. Finally, before we pass to our work divided into groups, please remind that digitization, as well as monitoring, for example, gives us provides us with a lot of data, and data needs management as well. It's not enough to collect data, to download data from your data logger. You have to take your time to properly arrange them into folders, subfolders, so that they are always accessible for analysis, and of course, studying them, because it's no help if you collect hundreds, thousands and thousands of data that you cannot retrieve because files are not in order, folders are not properly named. So when addressing a preservation plan, you have and also including digitization, you have to think that it's another collection adding to your physical collection. You will have to take care of this data, otherwise they're not helpful at all. And of course, you have to plan periodical check, backup, and refreshing when dealing with informatic data. So we can now move to our team work. You will now be divided into 3 groups, and you will have each group will have a case study to work on. I kindly ask the organizers to divide the groups. While they are doing that, I will the working group must assess the situation, propose an action plan for the collections, and think about costs, resources, and funds. Oh, sorry, this was the No, yes, the second. The second case study is the unknown library. You have been appointed a director of a library that holds collections of great value, but neglected and completely unknown. The director who preceded you did not adequately take care of the management, and even the exact content of the collections is not known exactly. You will have these slides, translated also in your groups, so you will have will be able to work on them in your group. Same, you have to assess the situation, propose an action plan for recollections, and think about costs, resources, and funds. Case study number 3, the mysterious archive. Your archive or library receives from the ministry the archival funds of a Russian astronomer written in Cyrillic. The funds is important because it preserves unpublished documents of high scientific value, and the ministry wants it to be properly preserved and made accessible to users within 12 months. No one in the archive, however, knows Cyrillic alphabet and is able to read the documents. The working group must assess the situation, propose an action plan for the collection, and think about costs and resources. So you will have 30 minutes starting from now to discuss these topics in your groups. Welcome back. So I'm really glad to see the way you have interacted within your groups. So let's move straight forward to the discussion. We now have 20 minutes for discussing the results of each group. In order to what happens here? Okay. In order to allow everyone to speak for his group, you will have 3 minutes for each group to present the results, and then we will keep the rest of our minutes to discuss all together. Okay. So let's start with group 1.
بالنسبة للسؤال الخاص بينا.
As for the our case study, is to stop the damage by rain and the leakage of water, and to take the collections away from the rain area. Third is to separate the damaged manuscripts from the good ones. 4 is to do a survey and surveillance manuscripts and what they need of restoration. 5 is to restructure the working group according to 3 groups. The first group is to restore the manuscripts. The second group is to digitize. The third one is to do maintenance of the place, so to stop the water leakage, and to replan the budget again according to the current situation and according to the damages, unexpected damages, and to report to the granting body to have more time and more money, and to discuss receiving more funds to cover the damaged, what happened. These are the points that we agreed upon, and the whole group discussed it.
Thank you. May I ask you just to repeat the first 2 points, because I had an issue with my earphone, so I couldn't hear the first 2 points. First is
مبدئيا إيقاف مصدر.
To stop the source of water that causes the damage. 2, to transfer the collection away from the place of the leakage quickly.
Thank you.
To a safe place to take.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You were.
Okay, group 2.
Hi. Hi, doctor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
First, I have to say that it would be amazing to choose me as a director. And my solution to the case study that we have to begin trying to know the place of or where our collection is stored. And second, we have to know how many items we have. So we have to count the number of the manuscripts. And the third step, we have to assess the conditions of each one of the manuscript. And after knowing the problems of each one, we have to take the step of going to the restoration lab to conserve the collection we have.
Thank you. Thank you. Is
Thank
it,
you.
or you have any? Thank you. So group 3. Who is speaking for group 3?
Oui, maintenant,
As for, apart from the content of this collection, we will distribute this collection into 3 parts: the most damaged, then the mid-damaged, and then the good one. Hence, the priority will be given to the most damaged manuscript. Secondly, the working group will be distributed into subgroups. First, to document the manuscript's photography, to take photography, and in terms of the shape and the content and the cover and the state of the papers, or the conditions of the papers. Secondly, that it should be transferred to chemical treatment to stop the problems pertaining the problems of this manuscript, and to safeguard it or to preserve it quickly against bacteria, against dust, against insects, and to have it quickly preserved and to stop these problems, these primary problems. Third, then it would be taken to the manual restoration or the machine restoration. After documenting and assessing the papers and the ink, so that I deal with each item alone, the ink and the paper, and the treatment material should be different for each. The third stage is restoration after chemical treatment, and to know the thickness of the paper and the material needed to restore, because some manuscripts have the golden and the ornament covers and different types of writing, and the ink might be different, carbon ink or metal ink.
May I ask you to summarize? Sorry.
To preserve it and put it in boxes. A restoration, it all should be done and then it would be given to the cataloging unit to have the exchange of language. This is the importance of the manuscripts.
Okay,
هنا من نوع الموضوع بحد.
thank you.
This, after that, there should be a physical study of the material used, the budget to be needed.
Yeah, okay, okay. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you so much, really, for all your contributions. It really raises a lot of ideas and thoughts that I would like to briefly discuss here. And I really see you have been working intensively in these 30 minutes. I will address some of the main points that raised from your presentations. The first case was an emergency situation. So we had a leakage, and the group decided that we have to first go to the problem, to the urgent problem. So I perfectly agree in first stopping the source. So we need to stop the damage immediately to avoid further damage, and then separate the collection so as to have specific treatments on the part of the collection. It doesn't mean necessarily restoration. It might be, for instance, drying them or putting them in a room with a drier place, if a dry environment, if they are not directly touched by water. So there are different steps of treating a collection that has been harmed by water. Then important, restructuring the working group. This is important as well. So make the best use of your staff, of the staff you have available within your institution. In front of an emergency, everybody can contribute to the emergency situation, and you can assign, people can be assigned, can be voluntarily help on different steps of this emergency. But of course, group one had this this point of the digitization, because the library had been financed for digitization, and so you have to make clear to the donor that you have had this issue in the library, this urgent issue in the library, and that because of that, you can discuss with the donor either possible solutions, either asking for a prolongation of the digitization project, so that you can have more time to address the urgent problem in your library. So never forget the relation with the donors. You have been financed for digitization. Now you have an emergency raising. Take care of the emergency. Don't forget about the donor, of course, and don't and really always involve the donor in what's happening in the library. I would add one thing. After the emergency in case you didn't have an emergency plan, an emergency preparedness plan in your library, provide it as soon as possible, because it is so important to have this plan for the things that might happen in the library or in the archive. Group two, we had the unknown library, the library where we don't even know what's in there. The group has said, yes, know the place, sure. Know how many items you have. This is one aspect of knowing your collections, but that's not all, because it's not enough to know how many items you have. You need to have at least an inventory list of what is preserved inside your library, inside your manuscript collections. This is for security purposes. because you always you can always keep track of, I don't know, missing items or misplaced items. So having a reliable list with essential data of manuscripts is absolutely essential. Not only the number of artifacts, but what's in there. You can have very essential data such as a shelf mark, title, author, and a very brief description of the item. This is the basic list you need to have in your library. Then you can start and planning all you mentioned. So cataloging, assessment condition, of course, and restoration lab. I see you all love restoration lab. I will end with group 3, and we'll get back to the conservation treatment. Group 3 had this new collection coming into the library in an unknown language, unknown alphabet. So no one in the library knows how to read and how to arrange these documents because they are in complete foreign language. What has been mentioned by the group is okay for the preservation part, I would say. So you assess the place, then you scale your conservation treatments on the basis of the items, etc. Really, I would invite you to go very careful with chemical treatments and restoration interventions. In many cases, it's not really needed. And I will just say also a few words about that. What I would highlight in this proposal is that you have to address the problem of the unknown language quite soon in your library for the reasons I mentioned in group 2. You need to know what's coming in your library, in your archive. So you need to somehow list the items. And in order to do that, if you don't have any human resources for who knows this alphabet, you can maybe ask to partner institutions in your city, in your country, and there are scholars that might be helpful, and it might be helpful to have these synergies with other institutions. So the archive provides handwritten sources for studies and research, and the researchers can provide, for instance, reliable data on how to list the items. So remind always that listing the items and know what's in the library is absolutely important. And last thing I would like to remind is really about conservation treatment, about restoration. Curiously, well, it's not curious, but all your proposals end up with a conservation treatment, like the last step of the preservation plan. It is the last step. It shouldn't be before the preservation assessment, and always assess very carefully whether the conservation treatment is really needed, because we really lose a lot. We can lose a lot of physical data when performing restoration treatment. Think about the bindings, original letters, original paper, polishing, sewing threads. All these elements might be lost with the conservation treatment. So it is really something you should carefully assess, also in consideration of how much is the artifact actually handled and accessed by users. Do users rely on digitized images, on digital images of the manuscripts? That's what I mentioned at the beginning. If you have the digital images, users can use a lot these images for research purposes, and the need of conservation treatment, of restoration, is then reduced. because it will not be handled so often, so intensively. So really, when planning and when doing your plan, take into consideration all these aspects. Do you have any question? Okay, I will then move to the second part. Is just a short presentation about project funding in our field. And things that you have already mentioned. So case studies, and we have addressed, we have encountered problems for which a specific project funding might be needed. So we must be able to choose which donor, which grant is better for our purposes, and mostly, no, not mostly, but for the same importance, do we know how to phrase our needs and to correctly represent our needs and to make them understandable, and how to match these needs with the donor's goals. I would draw your attention on this scheme, that is the SWOT analysis. This is the kind of analysis that comes from the project management environment, and it is very, very helpful when also for our our librarian environment. So when you build a project, when you plan a project for your collections, try to address these topics: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is the SWOT analysis. So you have to carefully assess all these aspects of your institution and of your collections. You see there is positive on the left and negative on the right, and internal on the upper side and external on the lower side. So the strengths of your institution, the weaknesses of your institutions. For instance, we don't have Russian-speaking scholars. This is a weakness for this specific project. But strengths, we have very skilled archivists who can really arrange our archival fonds. Opportunities, external. We have a university in our city, and there are scholars of Russian literature or Russian astronomy who can really be helpful on this aspect. Let's build a project together. And threats as well. The most immediate thought is about the rainy season. So when planning your project, think always about all these aspects. Now, I would like to do a very short exercise. It would be very encouraging to have, very challenging to have a longer workshop on these topics. I would like you to get back into your group and check very quickly, because we don't have much time left. Please have a look at these donors and try to get an idea of which one could be best for your project, for your specific case study. And I ask the organizers to divide the participants again into the 3 teams. Okay, welcome back. It's really a pity to interrupt such interesting discussions. I was really attending an interesting discussion within the groups. So, group 1, what is your choice?
اتفضل دكتور احمد.
اتفضل دكتور.
بالنسبه للفريق الاول جيردا هينكل هي اللي تتماشى معانا او مع هدف الدعم الخاص
one that aligns best with our needs especially that's only one with the concern with humanities, but the others are not into humanities. They are into history and the law. And since manuscripts are the basis of many of the sciences and literature, and so this foundation targets the preservation of humanities. Besides, Aleph Foundation is only concerned with architectural heritage, mosques, and some historical buildings, and so it's not really in line with what we need.
Okay, let's stick to your choice, and let's move to the other groups, and then we will discuss the results. Okay, so let's hear group 2. Thank you.
After our discussion, I think also we have chosen Gerda Henkel Foundation because it is related to the humanities and the manuscripts, and the other foundations that are working in the conflict areas. I think our group is from Brazil and Egypt, and thank God we are not in a conflict area. So we have a stable and a stable country. So we could choose Gerda Henkel and ask them to fund our project. I think also we could estimate the costs and trying to know the amount of money that they will grant us, and if they do not have the total amount of money that we need, we could take part of it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Group 3.
Pour le groupe 3, nous avons
in Iraq that the country was destroyed. When it comes to the civilization in Iraq, but the Mesopotamian culture, of course, is very rich and it cannot be erased from history. And so there are the mosaics and the mosques, and this culture itself is very rich in stuff worthy of study, and so we should preserve the identity of this nation, and it cannot be.
So which grant did you choose? Excuse me, because we really have to wrap up.
fini?
Aleph Foundation. Okay.
The Aleph Foundation.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. So we have to wrap up everything in a few minutes. Absolutely interesting, the ideas you had. So two groups thought that the Gerda Henkel Foundation could be more appropriate, and one Aleph Foundation. These were, I want to emphasize just some examples of grants that are available. And for instance, if you have a better look at Aleph Foundation grants, they are not exclusively for buildings, but there is documentary heritage, works of art. So in the crisis area, they are very active on different types of heritage. And when you talk about conflict area, you also have to think whether, for instance, you have a post-conflict situation, or, for instance, in the Prince Claus Foundation, you have a heritage under threat. And so think about what is the real need of your collection, the situation, geopolitical and also specific situation, and address the most appropriate donor. For instance, also Gerda Henkel might be an option for group number 3, since they also grant research grants. So you might be willing to match preservation activities and research on the unknown archive. So what I want to emphasize at the end of this workshop is to really make your ideas, or put your ideas on the table and try to build the best project to phrase the needs of your collections in the best possible way, and to address the right donors with by carefully reading the grants and the rules that govern it, and really try to build the best possible preservation project, and also preservation and promotion access project in a comprehensive way. I hope this workshop has been somehow helpful, even though maybe too short to address this topic. Thank you so much to all the participants. It was really a pleasure, and I'm here if you have some minutes left. If someone wants to raise some question, any question, I'm here. I don't know the organizers.